What's going on, everybody? Oscar checking in with an all-new video, and today I want to talk about a series that I've really enjoyed immensely, and I just finished the first volume. I know I talked about it in my manga that I'm currently reading video that I did a couple weeks ago. Now that that's over and now that I finished the first volume, I figured it would be a good time to talk about it. So this is Pluto. So pretty much this is a story that follows characters that exist in the Tezuka universe. And yeah, Osamu Tezuka had created Astro Boy, but in Japanese it's actually Adam, and he has a completely different name. And it's in the West that we refer to him as Astro Boy, but it's something that is been around. It's inherently Japanese, and it's been around since, like, I want to say the 50s is when he created the character. And yeah, it's an iconic thing for Japan and for Japanese culture. And Urasawa, approached Tezuka's son, or had his agent or somebody approach his son, and they had a meeting, and he pitched an idea about him doing a story that existed within that universe using those characters. And the story that he pitched had this dude right here, Gaged, who is a detective, as the lead. And the seven robots, like kind of like the seven wonders of the world, are being annihilated one at a time. And it's something that kind of reminds me of Watchmen. And I know I always say this every time I talk about the series, and I know I've talked about it at least in like two other videos, and I always say that it kind of reminds me of Watchmen, Philip K. Dick, and it also reminds me of like Isaac Asimov. But I don't want to say too much more. I don't want to make this video long. I like to keep these let's talk about short. So I'm going to show you a bunch of panels and say some things over the panels, talk about the story and the characters and everything, and then you will see my face again afterwards. So I hope that you enjoy this. Pluto, written and drawn by Naoki Urasawa, is based on one of the many legendary works by the renowned author and mangaka Osamu Tezuka. The work from which this series borrows, and the one on which it is based, is Mighty Atom, or Tetsuwan Atom, which translates literally to Iron Arm Atom. In the West, we know the character simply as Astro Boy. Pluto takes the premise Tezuka Sensei created in the 50s and gives it a more modern spin, setting it in a post-war setting similar to the Cold War. The majority of the first part of this story takes place in Europe. I'm not sure where it will go later, but as of right now, it's playing out like a noir detective story, with our lead being a highly intelligent robot named Geist. It has the Watchmen, someone is killing mass vigilantes feel. Only in this story there is a real conspiracy and not a misunderstanding such as with Rorschach and Watchmen. There is a lot more going on than the surface, gotta figure out who or what is killing the seven most advanced robots in the world thing. This story, though told almost exclusively through the eyes of Inspector Gage, is surprisingly human. And that isn't really a spoiler. You find out almost immediately that he isn't human. The spoilers lie in the details of the story and the things that aren't said rather than those that are. I like that Urasawa doesn't outright hold his reader's hand and say, "See, you dumb there is the answer." There is a lot more going on in the overarching story. Characters being introduced is necessary to build the narrative and further the story. No details feel wasted or needless. Every panel tells you something you need to know. There are side characters aplenty that come and go as we progress through this intricate story, and even they feel nuanced and true. One thing I appreciate that not a lot of storytellers do is making their side characters feel like real people, instead of simply being plot devices to keep the story flowing. There is a world in every person, a journey, and no matter how small or insignificant their part might feel, they should be treated with respect. I think that goes a long way towards reader investment. I love the choosing of Inspector Gage to be our lead. He is a great character, and while he wears only a handful of expressions, they still convey really specific sentiments that are so particular. It makes sense. He feels like a genuine detective. He could be on a TV show. I would watch him solve cases in a weekly procedural. Another character that I grew to have a strong fondness for is North Number 2. He doesn't make an appearance until much later into the story, but he is a key component. In the reality of the story, they all are, and all had a part to play in the war that took place 4 years ago. North is haunted by what he saw and what he did in said war, and wants to create beauty rather than be involved in further destruction. Everything about this story so far has been mesmerizing, and I don't think I'll be forgetting it anytime soon. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about this series. I think it's highly entertaining, and I recommend it to no end. And it's available right now. You can pick it up. I know for the most part it was sold out for like a really long time, but it looks like some copies were unearthed or something, or more copies were printed, and now it's in stock again. And I took full advantage of that to collect the whole series. So I should have everything soon. I actually have volumes 1 through 4 right now. I have volume 2 here, so I'm going to be starting it soon. I'm in the middle of, or not really in the middle of, I'm almost done with it. Goodnight Boon Boon. I'm like 30 pages shy of finishing Goodnight Boon Boon. So once I'm done with that, I'm jumping straight into Pluto Volume 2, and then after that I'll probably go back to Goodnight Boon Boon, because I'm trying to read like 5 different manga volumes at once, as you saw in the other video if you watched my other video. But yeah, I mean, this is my first Urasawa story, and I'm glad that I chose this to be the first one, because I have loved every second of it, and I'm a huge fan of like mystery stuff, like detective stuff, like noir. This definitely has like the noir thing going on, like, you know, Sin City, or, you know, something by Dennis Lehane, which was his story Shutter Island, you know, because that's like noir, or even The Black Dahlia, which is another book that I've really enjoyed, that I think is a solid read. Yeah, you know, like I love like noirish stuff, and even Watchmen has kind of like that noir thing. And this definitely, for me, feels like a melting pot of all of those things that I'd mentioned, with like some Blade Runner going on in the mix, and I love it. You know, and obviously it's not based on any of those things. You know, it's based on Tezuka's, you know, original work. It's based on Adam, or Astro Boy as we know him in the West. Yeah, I mean, I really came to have a pretty considerable fondness for Geist. I think that's how you say his name. It's a German name, and the whole story, you know, kind of takes place in kind of like a German kind of setting, you know, with the Europe, what's it, like the European, or the Euro consulate or something like that. Kind of like the system that exists, kind of the way it does in Europe today. Yeah, I love the drawings and the characters, the situations and everything, and I love how human Urasawa made these characters, and how interesting and compelling the narrative is. And there's a guy in here named North, who doesn't really appear until like the near the end of the story, and I think he ultimately became my favorite character. He has this relationship with a composer, and North was a battle bot, and he fought in a war, and he killed other robots, and, you know, he lives with the guilt of what he'd done, and he has this really strained relationship with this elderly composer that he's supposed to be taking care of. And ultimately they kind of form a relationship, and it ends up being really bittersweet, and I won't say why, but it has moments that are essentially heartbreaking. And it's weird that, like, I would even mention this, but it kind of reminds me also of like Violet Evergarden, because if you've watched Violet Evergarden, you know how she was essentially like a tool of death, you know, and she fucking like murdered people ruthlessly. And, you know, she's got like metal arms now because she lost both of her arms in the war, and she's turned around and doing the exact opposite and trying to bring joy to the world instead of taking life from it. And that's kind of what North from this story reminds me of. And he's one of the seven, like, I think one of the seven wonders or something, one of like the seven essential robots. And so is our lead, Geist. And each one of them is, for whatever reason, we haven't discovered it yet, and I don't know, so please don't spoil it for me. I would appreciate it. And yeah, so they're being hunted one by one, and yeah, I can't wait to see what's going on, what the ultimate end game is for whoever's doing all this destruction and taking out all these robots, and, you know, making the world a worse place for the characters in this universe by essentially taking out, you know, beloved characters. That's all I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that I can keep it kind of short. I'm going to stop talking now because I don't want it to be more than 10 minutes. I'm going to see if I can't trim a bunch of this out. Please take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. My name is Oscar. Until next time.
How you feel when you sippin' on drip in the whip? Haters talking shit, but I stay rolling lit. Stay holding splits, man, I crave popping pills. Sluggish on the drink, bitch, I'm chugging refills. Hallucinating face.